Good morning, guys. Today we're going to do some pressure canning. I want to teach you about the safety, the supplies, and the details in pressure canning. It can be scary or intimidating at first. I've been pressure canning for 25 plus years and I still get a little nervous just because of all the crazy stories I've heard, mostly from many years ago, the good old days. And I honestly, personally, have never had a problem with pressure canning. So first, I want to show you or talk to you about safety, and then we'll go into supplies. So for safety reasons, I would always make sure that there are no children or small animals underfoot. You will have a gigantic pot of hot boiling water under pressure, and I would be heartbroken if anything happened to a child or an animal just because they were in the way. So I don't think this is a time to have children in the kitchen unless you are having them help you fill jars, but then shoo them out when it comes time to actually doing the pressure canning. So for safety, I always have oven mitts. I have an apron to keep myself clean. I have plenty of towels and washcloths close by in case I need them. And then also for safety, for the safety of your food, I always make sure that my kitchen countertops are clean, make sure my jars are clean. Way back when, people would, well, not even way back when, because my mom still does this, she sterilizes her jars with hot water before she uses them. I personally run them through the dishwasher. She doesn't have a dishwasher, so that sterilizing her jars is an important step for her. So if you have a dishwasher, feel free to run them through, and if you don't, please wash your jars thoroughly and then sterilize them with boiling hot water. Put my apron on real quick, and then we will talk about supplies, which includes my apron. Includes some of the things I talked about for safety, like having a washcloth and some towels close by, having your oven mitts, your jars. So first, let's go this way and I'll show you some supplies I have here on the counter. Put the camera down a little bit. Oh, put it down a lot actually. There we go. All right, so one of the things that you need for pressure canning or hot water bath canning is tried and true recipes that are approved for canning. So I use this Ball Book of Canning. Let's see, Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, 400 delicious and creative recipes for today. So this is a newer print book. I've been using a Ball Book of Canning for the entire length of time that I've been canning, and I bought this new one last year. It's a little bit more updated, and so always good to have a book close by that gives you approved recipes and techniques for canning. You can also look those up on the internet. I have my oven mitts. I have my jar lifter. You'll see how I use this after a while. Very important. I have funnels. Now, today I used or am using two different funnels, and I'll show those to you in a minute. These are some that I've picked up at yard sales. This little funnel actually has a strainer in it, and I use this strainer in other funnels as well. We won't be using these three today, so I'll set those out of the way. I have a jug of vinegar, white distilled vinegar. I'll explain that in a few moments. And I have a bath towel, which I'll get to. You do not have to have a bath towel, it's my preference. And then for my canner, this is, I don't even remember what brand, let's see, Mirror, M-I-R-R-O. This is a pressure canner. This is actually a 24 pint, I think. It holds 24 pints because I can stack them in here, or it will hold 7 or 8 quarts. I can't remember exactly. You have to have your insert for canning. This keeps the jars off of the bottom of the pot. If I were stacking jars today, I would put in one level of jars, put another one of those inserts, and then my next level of jars. Because we're pressure canning, you have to have this weight. This came with this canner. My other canner has a gauge, and so it works a little bit differently. I prefer this one because it uses this weight, and I will explain that in a little bit. This pressure canner has a very tight fitting lid, and whenever you are pressure canning, you want to make sure that your gasket is good. Make sure it's nice and pliable. Make sure it doesn't have any cracks in it or tears. This gasket's actually new. I bought it last summer. The gasket that came with this canner had gotten some dry rot, so it cannot be used anymore. All right, so more supplies that you need for pressure canning or canning in general, or of course of your jars. Excuse me. And then you have to have your lids or flats. This is regular size. This is what's called wide mouth size. There's definitely a difference in them depending on what size jars you're using. And you also have to have rings for those lids or bands to hold your flats on. Okay, so today, for the sake of canning, or for the sake of showing you pressure canning, I'm going to be canning chicken, just raw packed chicken. I'll take you through that process. This jar, you can see, has an old label on it. Jars can be reused. That is one of the beautiful things about preserving food by way of canning, is you can reuse the jars. You cannot reuse the flats, but you can reuse the jars and the bands. And then, because I only have enough chicken to do 4 pints, and this will hold much more than that, I'm also going to be canning some dry beans. And these are just brown pinto beans, and then I have some white northern beans that I'm also going to be canning, and so I'll show you that as well. Okay, so we've gone through safety, which we'll talk more about safety as we go through, and we've gone through your supplies, and let's get started. So I'm going to pull you in closer so you can see what I'm doing. All right, to can chicken, all right, I have boneless, skinless chicken breast. I have chunked them into, I don't want to touch it, into pieces because I've already washed my hands. And what I'm going to do is I have put enough chicken in each jar to go about a little bit more than 3/4 of the way up. I want to leave 1.5 inches of head space, which means the top of the meat to the top of the jar is 1.5 inches. Okay? Now, most meats, including chicken, will make its own broth as it goes through the pressure canning process, which is a beautiful thing because it's cooking in its own broth. But it also makes it dry out just a tiny bit. So I'm actually going to add just a little bit of water to each of these jars, and I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Let me grab my measuring spoon and my little bit of salt. Okay, so I'm going to put in just 1/2 teaspoon of salt in each one. I'm doing this before I put in the water because I'm going to let the water kind of wash the salt down in through the chicken. Okay, there we go. Move that aside. All right, I'm going to finish filling this jar using my, this is the biggest funnel that I have. I really could probably fit another piece of chicken in there, but I don't have another piece of chicken to put in there. Okay, move this out of the way. All right, so I have my 4 jars of chicken. And now let's talk about the beans. Okay, so to can the beans, I used another funnel, doesn't matter if it's plastic or metal, and a 1/2 cup scoop. I put 1/2 cup of beans into each jar. If you're familiar with cooking beans, you know that they swell and expand. And so these beans I can then use for soups. I can use them for soups and stews. I could make ham and beans with these. I could warm these up and crush them and make my own refried beans. All of that would be delicious. And it makes a little bit more convenient to have that on my pantry shelf. All right, just a tiny bit, probably, I don't know, maybe 2 tablespoons. Ooh, I'm making a mess. Okay, so on the beans, I'm going to put enough water in the beans to come up to the bottom of that funnel, which gives me about 1 inch of headspace, or shall I say empty space between the top of the liquid to the top of the jar. I'm not going to flavor these beans with salt or anything because I don't know what I'm going to be using them for yet. And I would rather flavor them later as I get them out to use them. Okay, I'm going to fill my pitcher back up because I actually need that for the canner. All right, move my funnel out of the way. Now, one of the things I need to do next is I need to wipe down the rim of all of these jars, making sure there's no chicken residue or salt or, you know, little bits of dust or anything else that could have gotten on there in the last few minutes. Wet my rag real quick. You can also use vinegar for this part. I usually just use a wet rag, a clean wet rag. Okay, so now I'm going to go around the rim of every jar. Making sure there's nothing on there. Now at the same time, which I actually already did this before I filled them, checking for chips or cracks that might be in the rim of that jar. Anything on the rim, like salt or dust or meat residue, that's going to keep your jar from sealing. And then if there were any cracks or chips, that would also keep your jar from sealing. Okay, so I've got my jars ready. One last thing I'm going to do is I have a rubber spatula. I'm going to kind of poke down in here to release any air bubbles. Okay, now if I had more chicken to add, which I don't, these air bubbles, getting those out of there would give me more room for chicken. And you could also do these in quarts. For us here at Halfway Homestead, it's just me and my husband. Our children are grown and have their own homes. And so a lot of times, this little bit of chicken is more than enough, okay? Beans, I'm not going to worry about getting air bubbles out. It's mostly liquid at this point, so it'll be okay. All right, time to put our flats on. So, like I said before, you need brand new flats. Now, I'm going to show you the size difference, okay? This one's regular size. This one's considered wide mouth, okay? I keep my brand new flats in their original boxes simply to remind me that they are brand new. Now I do have one regular size jar here, so I'm going to put that on. Put this box away. I'm going to set these down on each jar. Now the flats are not reusable for canning. I do keep them and I reuse them for like dry storage. Okay, I have one flat left in that size. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in its box. For example, here is a jar that had pasta sauce in it. I've written on the top what it was and the date. This cannot be reused for canning, pressure canning, or hot water bath canning, although some people do try it and have some success. I've never even tried it. The recommendations are not to do that, but I do save these for kids' crafts. I teach first grade, and so sometimes we make things out of the flats. You also have to have bands to put on your jars, both regular size and wide mouth. This band, get up here closer, is really rusted and gross, so it's coming out of circulation. I can either throw it away, excuse me, which the bands never touch your food, but I just prefer to not have rusty stuff in there. I can spray paint this and the kids can make something out of it. All right, let's get these on. I'm gonna put these lids on just finger tight and set them into the canner. Now, here's a bit of safety that you need to know. Hot to hot, cold to cold. Okay, so this chicken is cold. It just came out of my refrigerator to be put into these jars. So therefore, in my canner, I am starting with cold water. If I was using something hot in my jars, like maybe I have just cooked some salsa or pasta sauce, then I would start with hot water in my canner. So hot to hot, cold to cold. Now, not all foods have to be pressure canned, but there are some that, yes, they have to be pressure canned. Meats, legumes like these dry beans or green beans, those have to be pressure canned. Stocks and broths, because it is a meat base, it has to be pressure canned. And each item to be pressure canned has a different amount of time that it has to be in the pressure canner. And sometimes, depending on where you live, elevation-wise, it will have a different a different weight to be pressure canned. So, I looked up in my canning book. Oh no, okay, they're not all going to fit, so I will just save this one for the next round, okay? I'll go ahead and put a band on it, and we'll just save that for later. Okay, so this towel has chicken gooey on it. I'm going to get it out of the way. I'm going to just throw it into the sink. I don't want chicken gooey on anything else. And set those aside. Okay, so in my canner, I've got my 8 pints. I need to add about 2 inches of water. So I'm going to kind of eyeball it down in there. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit, whoops, a little bit farther. All right, we'll stop at that. Now, because I don't want cloudy jars when they come out, the cloudiness doesn't hurt anything. It's just water deposits on your jars, but they're not very pretty that way. So I'm going to add just a splash of white vinegar, probably a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons. Okay, let me pull you up here closer so you can see the jars. If I can maneuver my camera, there we go. So there's the jars in about 2 inches of water. Okay, now I'm going to put my lid on. Now with pressure canners, make sure your gasket's in place. This is going to sit down into a couple grooves. Oops, I put it on backwards. I have to remember the red dot goes towards me, and that may be different for different canners. All right, put it down into grooves and then twist to lock the door, to lock the lid, okay? I'm going to turn this on medium high. I just want that water, the 2 inches in there, I want that to come to a boil, but it's also got to heat that chicken and heat those beans and the water that's in the beans. So this is going to take a while. Right now it's 10:41. I prefer to start this earlier in the day just because my kitchen is small and it really heats it up. So I'm going to keep my weight close by right here. We're going to let this heat up. And what I am listening for or watching for is this little vent right here on top. Bring you closer so you can see. Okay, this little vent, what's going to happen is as pressure builds, steam is going to start rising out of that vent. There's a tiny hole in the top. And then I'm going to let that steam for 10 minutes. Okay, so when you and I come back together, I'm going to show you that it's steaming and tell you what we do next. Okay, so it'll be just, it's actually going to be several minutes. I'll let you know how many minutes it takes when I come back to you. But as far as video's sake, it'll be just a second. All right, guys, do you see the steam coming out of the vent? Okay, it took about 30 minutes to come up to temperature to where it was ready to start steaming. It has been steaming for 10 minutes. And so what I need to do now, I'm going to slip on a hot pad oven mitt real quick. All right, so on my little weight, you can see there's a 5, a 10, and a 15. At our elevation here in mid-Missouri, we need the 10-pound weight. I'm going to put that on. Okay. Now, according to my Ball book of home preserving, the beans need to be pressure canned at 10 pounds for 45 minutes because they're in pints. The pints of chicken, however, need to go for 75 minutes. So what I'm going to do, because I have both in there, I'm going for the longer time to make sure they are both safely preserved and will be shelf stable. So the next thing I have to wait on before I can start my time is I need that little weight to start to jiggle. And for you, it'll be just a second. For me, I don't know. I'll let you know how long it takes to get there. All right, do you hear the jiggle? It's taken about between 5 and 10 minutes to get to this point. Now I can start my timer. And I'm going to set my timer for 75 minutes. Oops. Okay. I'm just going to let it go. I am going to turn my heat down just a tiny bit from 8 to a 7. All right. I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, guys, our 75 minutes is up. So I am simply going to turn off the burner. And we're going to let this sit, I'll probably check it in an hour. You cannot open this until all of that pressure has subsided. So in 1 hour, we will come back, check it to see if there's any pressure left in there, and I'll show you how to check that. And if there is no pressure, then we will open it up and take out the jars. All right, guys, so it has been 1 hour since I turned the burner off. I'm going to grab a wooden spoon, or actually I've got I don't even know what this is. I use it for mashing garlic. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out and I'm going to tap that weight. It doesn't jiggle. It doesn't make any sound. So I know that it's okay to open the canner. So I'm going to get my bath towel laid out here next to the canner to put my jars on. That's just how I like to do it. Protects my countertop. And then if there's any, well, there will be moisture on the jars. And so the towel just kind of soaks it up. All right, so I'm going to put the camera down for just a moment. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I just took the lid off. I put it over there on the sink. It's still, screaming hot. That way the hot liquid can drip off the bottom into the sink. All right, I'm going to use my jar lifter. I'm going to lift my jars up out of the canner and onto the bath towel. So that was a can of beans. Let's look at a can of chicken. Here we go. Here's some chicken. Some more chicken. That was that little bitty amount that I pulled out of there. Okay. Another jar of beans. See, it's a good thing I only put half a cup of dry beans in those jars. Look how much they swelled and took up space. Here's a brown bean and a brown bean. Okay, so now I'm going to let these sit for, till tomorrow morning at least. And that way they can cool completely. I will then make sure they have all sealed. If there's a jar that has not sealed completely, I'll just put it in the fridge and use it up right away. But judging from right now, it looks like this one here has not sealed yet. You can still see the button is popped up, but all the others look good. So we'll give that one time to seal. Like I said, if it doesn't, we'll just use it. And then at that point, once they're cool, I'll take the bands off. I will label the tops with I can see what it is, but mostly with the date is what's really important. And then I will put them into my food storage room. If you want to check out my food storage room, around here. If you want to check out my food storage room, go to Halfway Homestead Water Bath Canning. In that video, I showed you my food storage room and talked about a safe way to store your home canned goods. And so I hope you liked this video. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you've been canning, and hit that like button, share this video with somebody, and please, please, please subscribe to my channel, Halfway Homestead. And again, my name is Michelle, and I will see you next time. Bye.